Inside an active quarry, a worker positions an attached basket beneath a raised metal shovel as heavy soil begins moving unexpectedly from the elevated equipment. Soil or other materials can shift unexpectedly when released from raised buckets, especially during excavation and loading operations. Inside a manufacturing plant, a group prepares to lift a metal block with a crane before the load begins to lose balance. Rigging dense materials requires proper center alignment before any upward tension begins. When lifting straps attach unevenly, the steel can quickly lose balance. Gravity takes over when the load leaves the floor. The structure may shift from its base, moving in an unpredictable direction. Anyone standing too close could be exposed to serious impact or caught within the load's movement zone. This sudden movement creates a workplace hazard and leaves little time to respond safely. Secure all rigging attachments before applying upward tension. On a steep rural road, a heavy transport machine struggles uphill as a sudden loss of forward power sends it rolling backward toward a trailing biker. Operating heavy transport machines on steep inclines requires careful control and adequate following distance. If an engine loses power on an uphill slope, the vehicle may begin moving backward unexpectedly, particularly if the braking system cannot hold its weight. The combination of vehicle weight, slope, and limited stopping distance can quickly create a serious hazard for anyone nearby. Smaller vehicles and motorcycles traveling behind heavy equipment may have limited space to react or change direction. Maintain substantial distance from heavy vehicles on steep roads. Keep an escape route available. Outside a retail shop, a person attempts to push a freestanding cabinet before the tall display suddenly becomes unstable and begins tipping toward her. Tall freestanding displays can become unstable when they are moved without proper support. Pushing an unanchored cabinet may shift its center of gravity and cause the structure to tip unexpectedly. Heavy contents can further increase the risk, particularly when they are positioned high within the unit. Securing tall displays to suitable walls, removing contents before relocation, and using appropriate handling equipment can significantly reduce these risks. Retail workers should also assess the surrounding area and use proper relocation procedures whenever moving large or heavy fixtures. At a roadway under construction, two men work in an elevated basket when the support vehicle unexpectedly becomes unstable, posing a significant safety risk. Operating elevated work platforms requires proper stabilization and careful attention to equipment limits. When a support vehicle is not positioned correctly or its stabilizers are not fully deployed, the equipment can become unstable while carrying workers at height. Uneven ground, excessive reach, or improper loading can further affect the platform's balance. Workers should remain within the manufacturer's operating limits and never use elevated equipment without the required stabilization systems in place. Operators should also monitor ground conditions throughout the task and stop operations if stability becomes uncertain. Use approved fall protection equipment. On a heavy manufacturing floor, workers position material beneath an elevated metal frame before the automated cycle unexpectedly activates and begins lowering the equipment. Working inside an active compression area creates a serious workplace hazard. Automated machinery can begin a programmed movement unexpectedly if proper isolation procedures are not followed. Before placing hands or tools inside a machine's operating area, workers should completely isolate the equipment from its energy source and verify that movement cannot occur. Mechanical supports should also be installed where required to prevent unexpected movement of raised components. No one should enter an active machine area until the equipment has been safely isolated, secured, and confirmed, ready for maintenance or adjustment. Follow lockout procedures every time. Inside a woodworking shop, a man guides a flatboard across a spinning table saw when his hand moves dangerously close to the active blade. Working too close to a rotating saw blade creates a serious risk of injury. When hands approach the cutting area, even a small loss of control can place them in a hazardous position before the operator can react. Changes in the wood, an unstable grip, or unexpected movement can cause the material to shift suddenly during cutting. Using push sticks or other approved guides keeps hands away from the blade while maintaining control of the workpiece. Along a paved commercial walkway, A worker works atop a ladder as its footing begins to shift unexpectedly. Working at height requires stable equipment and a suitable surface. When ladder feet rest on smooth or uneven ground, the supports may shift unexpectedly under normal movement. A ladder can become unstable if its legs are not properly positioned, locked, or placed on an appropriate surface. Workers may have limited ability to regain stability once the equipment begins moving. Inspecting the work area, securing the ladder correctly, and maintaining 3 points of contact can significantly reduce these risks. Inside an active loading bay, 2 separate machines slowly lower a heavy roll before a metal prong suddenly gives way under heavy downward pressure. Sharing heavy cargo weight between 2 lifting devices creates extreme mechanical stress. When dense material shifts, one arm suddenly absorbs the entire load. This uneven distribution pushes solid steel beyond its breaking limit. The rigid support fails unexpectedly under heavy force. Without warning, the detached piece can move rapidly and unpredictably. Anyone nearby could be exposed to moving equipment or unexpected material movement. Use one machine rated to handle the full item weight. Clear the entire zone completely and maintain a safe distance. At a bustling shipping center, a worker feeds plastic film onto a load on a spinning pallet. Within seconds, an unexpected safety issue develops. Working close to rotating packaging machinery creates a serious entanglement hazard. Plastic film can catch on clothing, tools, or other objects and pull them toward moving components. Continuous rotation can make it difficult to regain control once material becomes caught. Workers should never manually handle wrapping material while machinery is actively rotating unless the equipment is specifically designed for that procedure. Using mounted controls, maintaining a safe distance, and following established operating procedures can significantly reduce these risks. Operate packaging platforms from mounted controls. Keep hands and loose clothing away from moving parts. Inside a busy hair salon, a woman climbs a wooden folding ladder as its base begins shifting on the smooth floor, creating a sudden stability hazard. Positioning climbing equipment on smooth flooring can reduce stability and increase the risk of unexpected movement. When a folding ladder is not fully opened, locked, or positioned correctly, its supports may shift outward during use. The risk becomes greater when the floor is slippery or uneven. Workers using portable ladders should inspect the surface, ensure all hinges and supports are properly secured, and maintain 3 points of contact while climbing. Appropriate positioning and regular equipment checks can significantly reduce the likelihood of ladder incidents. Maintain 3 points of contact throughout every task. At a coastal dock, an operator backs a heavy earth mover onto a floating wooden platform as the structure begins losing stability over the water. Moving heavy machinery onto floating platforms requires careful assessment of weight capacity and structural stability. A platform designed for lighter loads may not safely support the concentrated weight of large earth-moving equipment. As the machine moves farther onto the platform, its weight distribution can change and affect overall stability. Water conditions, platform construction, and equipment positioning can further influence the platform's ability to remain level. Operators should never assume that a floating structure can support heavy machinery without confirming its capacity and condition beforehand. Load heavy equipment only onto properly rated platforms. Inside an industrial fabrication floor, a man crouches near an automated track machine as a heavy sliding carriage begins moving. Unexpectedly along the rail, working near motorized track equipment while it is active creates a significant safety risk. Once powered, the carriage follows a defined path and may move with considerable momentum. Anyone positioned within that operating area may have a limited opportunity to recognize the movement or relocate safely. Maintenance personnel should never enter an active equipment path without first confirming that the system has been safely stopped and isolated. Operators should verify that the entire travel path is clear before starting any automated sequence and maintain communication with workers throughout equipment operations. Inside an active building zone, a driver steers a motorized transport beneath an unsecured overhead beam, creating an immediate clearance hazard. Storing heavy structural materials overhead without proper securing creates a serious falling object risk. Unanchored beams can shift unexpectedly if contacted by moving equipment or affected by vibration. Operators working beneath elevated materials may have limited visibility of overhead hazards while concentrating on their travel path. Proper mounting, adequate clearance, and secure fastening are essential for preventing unexpected movement. Work areas should be inspected before equipment begins moving, with overhead obstructions clearly identified and marked. Inside an active processing mill, a worker leans over a rotating drive shaft as loose clothing moves dangerously close to the exposed rotating component. Working near unguarded moving machinery creates a serious entanglement hazard. Loose clothing, hair, jewelry, or other items can become caught in rotating components and pull the material toward the machine. Once something becomes entangled, the equipment may continue operating until it is stopped or isolated. Workers should maintain a safe distance from exposed moving parts and never reach across active machinery. Proper machine guards, fitted clothing, emergency stops, and lockout procedures can significantly reduce these risks. Equipment should be shut down and isolated before inspection, cleaning, adjustment, or maintenance. On a steep rural incline, a driver steers a loaded transport uphill as the machine suddenly loses power and begins shifting backward. Moving a loaded transport up a steep slope can significantly affect the machine's stability and traction. If forward movement is interrupted, the vehicle may begin rolling backward or become difficult to control, particularly on loose or uneven ground. Heavy cargo can further change the vehicle's center of gravity and increase the risk of instability. Operators should assess slope conditions, load weight, and equipment limitations before beginning an uphill journey. Operators should also avoid carrying loads beyond approved limits and remain alert to changing ground conditions throughout the operation. Inside an industrial loading zone, a man stands near an open freight lift platform and steps backward toward the unprotected edge, creating a serious fall hazard. Moving backward near unprotected edges can create significant workplace risks because the person may not see hazards behind them. Open freight lift platforms and floor openings should always be clearly identified and protected with appropriate barriers. Workers should remain aware of their surroundings, especially when moving around loading areas where visibility may be limited. Workers should also maintain a safe distance from open platforms and avoid walking backward near exposed edges. Check your surroundings before moving backward. Install barriers around open floor openings. At an active loading bay, a driver moves a forklift inside a parked cargo trailer as the transport truck unexpectedly begins pulling away from the dock. Unexpected trailer movement during loading can create a serious stability hazard for forklifts operating inside. If a truck moves away from the dock while loading is still underway, the connection between the trailer and loading platform may become unsafe. Forklift operators can suddenly lose a stable travel surface as the gap between the dock and trailer increases. Drivers should never move a trailer until loading personnel confirm that operations are complete and equipment is clear. Forklift. Operators should also verify that trailers are properly secured before entering them to load or unload cargo. At an active fueling station, an operator adjusts a transfer hose on a transport tanker as a sudden ignition occurs near the surrounding fuel vapors. Moving flammable liquids through transfer systems can create static electricity if proper grounding and bonding procedures are not followed. Fuel vapors may accumulate around transfer points and can become hazardous when exposed to an ignition source. Operators should ensure that all required grounding connections are established before transferring fuel and that equipment is maintained according to approved procedures. Smoking, open flames, electrical faults, and other potential ignition sources should be strictly controlled around fueling areas. Adequate ventilation, emergency shutdown systems, appropriate firefighting equipment, and clearly defined exclusion zones can further reduce risks during fuel transfer operations. Across a busy shipping yard, a driver steers a forklift to raise a heavy pallet as the oversized cargo shifts the machine forward, creating a serious stability hazard. Lifting materials beyond a machine's rated capacity can significantly reduce forklift stability. When a heavy load extends forward on the forks, its weight can shift the forklift's center of gravity beyond the safe operating range. This may cause the machine to become unstable, particularly when loads are raised too high or positioned incorrectly. Operators should verify cargo weights, follow the forklift's capacity chart, and keep loads properly positioned against the backrest. Proper training and adherence to manufacturer guidelines are essential whenever forklifts handle heavy or oversized materials. In an active timber storage yard, a wheel loader drives over a loose wooden block, unexpectedly sending the object across the work area toward a distant worker. Driving heavy machinery over unsecured objects can create unexpected movement and workplace hazards. When a wheel or tire passes over an object, pressure from the machine may cause it to shift or move suddenly in an unpredictable direction. Even small pieces of debris can travel farther than expected when disturbed by moving equipment. Workers positioned nearby may not anticipate the object's movement or have enough space to react safely. Operators should also remain alert to ground conditions and avoid driving over loose materials whenever possible. At a dusty concrete mixing yard, a worker climbs the side ladder of a cement tanker as pressure-related equipment movement creates an unexpected hazard. Pressurized bulk transport equipment requires careful monitoring during loading and unloading operations. Air pressure used to move cement or other materials can create significant forces within the vessel and connected systems. If pressure levels become abnormal or a component develops a fault, covers and fittings may move unexpectedly. Pressure gauges, relief systems, routine inspections, and proper shutdown procedures help operators identify abnormal conditions and reduce workplace risks. Maintenance should only be performed after the equipment has been safely depressurized and isolated according to established procedures. Deep inside a packed storage warehouse, an elevated forklift shifts a top-tier pallet, sending several cardboard boxes unexpectedly into the aisle below. Lifting unstable pallets above active walking paths creates a serious falling object hazard. When loose cargo shifts during forklift operations, stacked materials can move unexpectedly and enter areas occupied by workers. High-level storage requires careful load placement, secure stacking, and appropriate separation between equipment and pedestrian routes. Workers should never walk beneath elevated loads or enter designated exclusion zones while lifting operations are underway. Clearly marked pedestrian routes, physical barriers, and proper warehouse traffic procedures can significantly reduce the risk of falling materials and improve safety throughout busy storage facilities. On a sloped residential driveway, a driver connects a cable to a heavy chest as an idling truck begins moving unexpectedly down the incline. Leaving a transport vehicle unsecured on a slope can create a serious runaway vehicle hazard. Gravity can cause a parked vehicle to move if the parking brake or other securing measures are not properly engaged. Once a heavy vehicle begins rolling, controlling or stopping it becomes increasingly difficult, particularly on an incline. Drivers should park on stable surfaces whenever possible, engage the parking brake, select the appropriate gear, and use wheel chocks when required. Vehicles should never be left unattended on slopes without proper securing measures in place. In a suburban residential yard, a man finishes cutting through a towering trunk as the large timber begins falling toward a nearby house. Cutting tall timber near buildings requires careful planning and controlled directional techniques. Once a tree's supporting structure is cut, its movement can become difficult to predict. Weight distribution, wind, nearby structures, and the condition of the trunk can all influence the direction of the fall. A tree landing outside the intended area can damage property and create hazards for people nearby. Using suitable ropes, approved rigging equipment, and proper cutting techniques can help guide the fall more safely. Workers should assess the surrounding area, establish a clear exclusion zone, and identify a safe retreat path before beginning the cut. On a busy factory floor, operators rig a metal frame to an electric hoist as the rising load suddenly swings sideways toward a nearby worker. Lifting a solid load with an off-center attachment can create unexpected sideways movement. As the hoist raises the frame, the lifting point may shift toward alignment with the load's center of gravity. This can cause the suspended material to swing across the surrounding work area. Workers positioned too close may have limited space to respond safely as the load moves. Operators should also verify load balance, inspect lifting equipment, and communicate clearly with everyone involved before raising or moving suspended materials. Verify rigging and load balance before lifting. Inside a disposal area, a worker swings a heavy sack toward a large dumpster as the weakened bottom suddenly gives way during the movement. Swinging heavy waste bags can place significant stress on thin plastic and their seams. When a loaded sack is moved quickly, its contents can shift and increase pressure on weaker sections of the material. Damaged or overloaded bags may tear unexpectedly, allowing their contents to spill across the surrounding work area. Supporting heavy loads properly, checking containers for damage, and using appropriate lifting methods can help prevent unexpected spills. Workers should also avoid overfilling disposal bags and use suitable equipment when handling particularly heavy or bulky waste. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.